She drenched my wife's feet in beer. I made her regret it. The drive up to Lake Chelan was stunning. Sarah was practically buzzing with excitement, pointing out every osprey nest and roadside fruit stand. I was too, truth be told. We both needed this break. Our kindergarten class had been particularly challenging this year, and my IT job had been burying me under mountains of server migration paperwork. A week of sun, swimming, and Washington craft brews sounded like heaven. The lake house was even better than the pictures online. Huge, sprawling decks, a private dock, and enough bedrooms to house a small army. The only downside? It was a shared rental. We knew that going in, but still, sharing vacation space with strangers always felt a little dicey. We were unpacking when we first saw her. Brenda. She swept onto the deck like she owned the place, a cloud of expensive perfume and thinly veiled disdain. Her husband, Greg, trailed behind her, looking like a basset hound who'd just been told he couldn't have any more kibble. David? Darling, Brenda boomed, her voice carrying across the deck. Honestly, the patio furniture is simply dreadful. Did you even bother to replace it this year? David, one of the owners, emerged looking flustered. He's a good guy, a bit socially awkward, but always tries to please. Brenda, so good to see you. We thought it was still in pretty good shape, Brenda just scoffed. Darling, good shape isn't going to cut it. You know I expect a certain standard. Sarah and I exchanged a look. This was going to be interesting. Over the next couple of days, Brenda continued to be Brenda, complaining about everything, demanding special treatment, and generally making life unpleasant for everyone around her. She sent back her salmon at dinner because it wasn't pink enough. She hogged the best lounge chairs by the pool, and she loudly critiqued everyone's choice of swimwear. Sarah, bless her heart, tried to ignore it. She's the kindest person I know, always seeing the best in people, even when they're actively trying to be awful. But even Sarah had her limits. And her limits, unfortunately, involved her feet. Sarah has an aversion, a deep-seated, almost phobic reaction to having her feet touched. It's not a ticklish thing, it's more like a visceral, recoiling response. She hates it. Hates the feeling. Hates the sensation. Hates everything about it. I've learned over the years to be hyper-aware of my proximity to her feet. The incident happened on the third day. We were all gathered on the deck for a casual afternoon get-together. David had fired up the grill, Susan was mixing cocktails, and everyone was generally enjoying the sunshine. Brenda, of course, was holding court, regaling everyone with tales of her recent trip to Monaco. Sarah and I were sitting on the edge of the deck, dangling our feet over the side. She'd taken off her sandals, enjoying the feel of the warm wood against her skin. I was halfway through explaining a particularly complicated server issue when I saw it happen. Brenda, who had clearly had a few too many glasses of rosé, turned towards Sarah, a strange glint in her eye. She was holding a full pint glass of some local IPA. You know, Brenda slurred, those sandals are just awful. Simply dreadful. You can't possibly think those are stylish? Before Sarah could even respond, Brenda deliberately upended the glass, sending a cascade of ice-cold frothy beer directly onto Sarah's bare feet. The look on Sarah's face, I'll never forget it. It wasn't just annoyance or disgust. It was genuine distress. She gasped, recoiled, and practically leaped to her feet, stumbling backwards. Oh my God, I am so sorry, Brenda said, but the smirk on her face told a different story. It was too deliberate, too pointed. Sarah didn't say a word. She just turned and fled inside, her face flushed with humiliation and discomfort. I stood there, stunned for a moment. Then, a slow burning rage started to simmer in my gut. I wanted to scream, to yell, to unleash all my pent-up frustration on Brenda. But I knew that wouldn't help Sarah. It would only escalate the situation and make things worse. So, I took a deep breath, forced a smile, and said, "Accidents happen, right, Brenda?" My voice was dangerously calm. I excused myself and went inside to find Sarah. She was in the bathroom, scrubbing her feet with a vengeance. Her eyes were red and puffy. "I hate this," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I hate it, I hate it, I hate it." I knelt down and took her hand. I'm here. I spent the next hour just holding her, talking softly and trying to calm her down. The rest of the day was a write-off. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling of the beer on her feet, the violation of her personal space. That night, after Sarah had finally fallen asleep, I sat on the deck, nursing a beer and staring out at the lake. The anger was still there, simmering just below the surface, but it was mixed with something else. A cold, calculating determination. Brenda had messed with the wrong person, and she was going to regret it. The next morning, I started my reconnaissance. I needed to know everything about Brenda. What made her tick? What were her vulnerabilities? What could I use against her? I started with Greg. Poor Greg. He was clearly miserable, trapped in a gilded cage of Brenda's making. He was sitting alone at the breakfast table, looking like he hadn't slept in days. "Morning, Greg," I said, trying to sound casual. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" He just grunted in response. "So, you guys come here often?" I asked. He sighed. "Every year," Brenda insists. "It's tradition." I pressed on. "Brenda seems particular about things." Greg finally looked up, a flicker of something akin to hope in his eyes. "Particular? That's one word for it. She has her routines, her expectations. It's demanding." "I can imagine," I said, trying to keep the sympathy out of my voice. "So what does Brenda do? For work?" "She manages her investments," Greg said vague. "She's very successful." Translation: she inherited a fortune and spends her days making everyone else miserable. I continued to chat with Greg, subtly fishing for information. I learned that Brenda was obsessed with her appearance, spending a fortune on skincare and treatments. She had a very specific routine, using only the most expensive and exclusive products. That gave me an idea. Later that day, I drove into town. Lake Chelan was a popular tourist destination, so there were plenty of shops catering to the wealthy clientele. I found a small, upscale spa and pretended to be shopping for a gift for my wife. I struck up a conversation with the bartender, who seemed to know everybody in town. After a couple of carefully worded questions, I learned that Brenda and Greg were regulars at the bar. The bartender, a woman with a knowing smile, even volunteered some additional information. "Oh, Brenda," she said, shaking her head. "She's a character, always complaining about something. And she's obsessed with her skin. Spends a fortune on it. She once sent back a martini because the olive wasn't pitted properly. Said it was going to ruin her complexion." Jackpot. I asked the bartender what products Brenda used. She hesitated and leaned in conspiratorially. "She's really into that Lemire stuff. And this other brand I can't pronounce. Something French, I think." The pieces were starting to fall into place. Back at the lake house, I waited until Brenda and Greg were out for dinner. I knew they had a strict reservation time, and Brenda was always punctual. I went to their room, carefully picking the lock with a small tool I kept on my keychain. Years of working in IT, you pick up skills. Inside, the room was exactly as I expected, impeccably tidy, bordering on sterile. Brenda's toiletries were neatly arranged on the bathroom counter, a small fortune's worth of creams, serums, and lotions. I quickly identified the brands the bartender mentioned. A small jar of La Mer face cream, an expensive-looking bottle of some French anti-aging serum. This was it. My plan was simple, but effective. I found a nearly identical jar of tanning lotion. I carefully unscrewed the top of the La Mer cream and replaced it with the tanning lotion, taking extra care to not damage the container. I also made sure to smooth it out, so nothing would be immediately apparent. I resealed the jars, wiped down the counter, and left the room, locking the door behind me. Back in our room, Sarah was reading a book. She looked up as I came in. "Everything okay?" she asked, her brow furrowed with concern. "Everything's perfect," I said, smiling. "Just perfect," I said. The next morning, I watched with a quiet satisfaction as Brenda went through her usual skincare routine. I could practically see her patting the tainted cream onto her face, blissfully unaware of the impending disaster. It took a couple of days for the effects to become noticeable. At first, it was subtle, a slight orange tint to her skin. But as she continued to use the cream, the color deepened, becoming increasingly pronounced. Brenda, of course, was horrified. She spent hours in the bathroom, examining her face in the mirror, her brow furrowed with worry. She tried scrubbing, exfoliating, anything to get rid of the orange hue, but nothing worked. The paranoia started to set in. She became convinced that she was allergic to something, blaming everything from the water quality to the cleaning products used in the room. She confronted David and Susan, accusing them of negligence and threatening to sue. David and Susan, already intimidated by Brenda, were beside themselves with anxiety. They offered her free massages, complimentary dinners, anything to appease her. Brenda started to avoid the other guests, hiding in her room, her face covered in a thick layer of makeup. She was mortified, humiliated, and completely clueless as to the cause of her predicament. Meanwhile, Sarah and I were enjoying our vacation. The atmosphere around the lake house had lightened considerably with Brenda out of the picture. People were laughing, relaxing, and generally having a good time. One evening, Sarah came to me, a mischievous glint in her eye. Did you have something to do with Brenda's complexion?" I just smiled and raised an eyebrow. Sarah burst out laughing. "You did? Oh my God, you're amazing! That's the most petty, brilliant thing you've ever done. She deserved it," I said, my voice hardening. "She messed with you. She humiliated you. I wasn't going to let her get away with that." Sarah wrapped her arms around me. "I love you," she whispered. "You're the best." A few days later, Brenda and Greg packed their bags and left. Brenda blamed a sudden illness, claiming she needed to see her dermatologist immediately. Greg, bless his heart, looked like he'd just won the lottery. As their car pulled away, I raised my glass of craft beer in a silent toast. Sarah smiled at me, and we both felt a sense of justice. It was petty, yes, but it was satisfying. A week later, we received a text message from Liam and Chloe, the other couple who'd been at the lake house with us. "Brenda's still freaking out," it read. "Apparently, the orange tint is refusing to budge. She's blaming everyone but herself. Apparently, she has a big gala coming up and is threatening legal action against the tanning lotion brand." We laughed and exchanged a knowing look. Some people just never learn. Our vacation continued, undisturbed by Brenda's presence. The lake shimmered, the sun shone, and Sarah's feet remained beer-free. And that, I thought, was a perfect vacation.